Should Socrates drink the hemlock? This is the very complex and multifaceted question we'll be trying to answer throughout this presentation. Socrates was a philosopher from Athens, best known for his persistent questioning of others through Elenctic examination to learn and gain knowledge. He was brought to trial by the Athenian court on charges of impiety and corrupting the youth. They claimed that he was departing from traditional religion by not acknowledging the gods that they did, as well as creating new gods. Although Socrates never claimed to be a teacher, they also said that he was corrupting the young through his activities. He was ultimately found guilty and given a death sentence. While waiting to be killed, his friends, specifically Crito, tried to convince him to escape, but he disagreed and was killed by drinking hemlock shortly after. Socrates made it clear that the only way he would escape is if they could come to the conclusion that it would be just to do so. One of Socrates' core beliefs, like many Athenian citizens, was that living a life of justice would guarantee a happier afterlife. Therefore, no matter what reason, Socrates did not want to escape because it would be unjust. He had many other reasons for his decision, but it is still debated on whether Socrates should have escaped or if he should have drank the hemlock. This is the question we are going to answer as we go through each of Socrates' arguments and reasoning.
We think that Socrates should drink the hemlock because it would be unjust to break the laws of his city and therefore break the social contract he made with the state. It is important for Socrates to be just because not only is finding justice the goal of his philosophical work, but it will also guarantee him a better afterlife.
What is a social contract? The basic premise of a social contract is that members of a society have an unspoken agreement among themselves and with their government to cooperate in order to benefit everyone. An example of this is the citizens of a city giving up some freedoms in exchange for protection and other benefits from the government. Because Socrates lived under the democratic rule of the city, he was protected by their laws his whole life. He chose to live in Athens, and by this choice he agreed to abide by their laws and whatever judgments or choices they decide to make. Therefore, he has entered a social contract with the city. As said in Crito, this was not a formal signed contract, but one agreed to by deeds. This is evidence of Socrates' awareness of the social contract he is in. He knows that because he chose Athens as his home and continued to live there for 70 years, he made a commitment to the city. To break this social contract would be unjust because the state has been educating, protecting, and raising him under these laws throughout all his life. Socrates has benefited from these laws in some ways, so for him to break the social contract when he feels like it isn't benefiting him anymore wouldn't be fair or just to the state, regardless of whether or not he agrees with them.
Some could disagree with this argument about Socrates' social contract by saying that his city broke the social contract first by convicting him unfairly with charges that were not fully supported. Yet, Crito believes that Socrates had the option to request a more fair ruling, and he says that Socrates could have proposed exile as a counterpenalty. Because he did not advocate for himself and seek protection from the death sentence, he has also accepted the court's ruling. There were laws and rules built in that could have protected Socrates from death, including his ability to propose his own punishment. He just chose not to use these parts of the justice system and social contract to his benefit. Now, to escape after having accepted the court's ruling, no matter how extreme it may be, would be an act of injustice. Socrates stated that it's never right to do injustice or to do injustice in return or to retaliate with bad treatment when one has been treated badly, and we agree. An act of injustice against Socrates does not excuse an act of retaliation and betrayal on Socrates' end, especially because he did not even try to protest his punishment and use the laws put in place to protect him under the social contract.
Another argument that rationalizes Socrates drinking the hemlock is the idea of gratitude, or fairness and reciprocity. This argument made by Socrates defines the city as the benefactor of citizens. Therefore, Socrates is benefactor. Socrates owes compliance to the city because even the laws convicting him that he may find unjust are the same laws that raised him, educated him, and gave him the opportunities needed to be a philosopher. It would be unjust for him to take these benefits and not give back what he owes when the time comes for him to do so. Socrates said, "Do you think that a city can continue to exist and not be overthrown if the legal judgments rendered in it have no force? The Athenian laws were created for the benefit of their people as a whole, not to condemn them. This benefit is that they are able to live in a thriving city that can keep inner peace. However, for the laws to actually benefit others and for the sake of fairness, Their citizens must understand this and give back to the state by simply following the laws. We think this is similar to the social contract, and that Socrates was raised and protected by these laws. Therefore, to be gratuitous to the city, he has the obligation to follow them in return for what they have given him. It would be unjust for him not to reciprocate what the state has done for him, and the only way he can do this is by following their laws and abiding by the decisions of the justice system, even if these laws may seem unjust.
However, should Socrates reciprocate obedience to the city when the city is not just? This is a question that counters this argument of gratitude. To answer this, we will start by saying it is not the question of the city's justice in this argument that is important. The idea that the city's laws benefit Socrates because he was raised by them is another sign of the social contract he's entered with the city. As previously explained, injustice in the form of retaliation is still an injustice and will still condemn Socrates to a terrible afterlife. While the state can still be considered a benefactor because of the opportunities it gave Socrates, it should not simply be obeyed because of its gifts. Instead, Socrates' acceptance of these gifts makes him responsible to give back to the city. For example, if all citizens simply stopped obeying laws because they are limiting and unfair, the court would have no authority and would not be able to hold the city to a standard of justice. If the city, however, were to no longer provide any benefits to its citizens, meaning if Athens didn't provide Socrates any education, rights, or opportunities to use the law to his advantage, it would no longer take that role of benefactor, and its citizens would not owe the same obedience.
To conclude, we want to circle back to the foundation of this controversial question, justice. Socrates declared at the beginning of Crito that if after his Olympic examination they found it would be just for him to escape, then he would. But if they found that it was unjust for him to do so, then he would stay in prison and accept his fate by drinking the hemlock. Considering Socrates did end up facing his death, clearly in his opinion it was just for him to be compliant with the law. However, during this presentation, our goal was to show that we too believe Socrates made the right decision in terms of justice. In order to take the path that is just, we believe Socrates had to abide by the social contract he was in with the city, as well as reciprocate what was given to him by the city in the name of gratitude. So yes, for these reasons, Socrates should drink the hemlock.